All right, welcome back, everybody. Chelsea, I don't remember if you're introducing or I'm introducing, and is there an introduction needed for our very own Trisha and Vitali? So we'll just hand it off to Trisha and Vitali. Welcome back, everybody. We are at the magic number 45, so we'll wait just a few more seconds to get started. Um, our magic number was 59 yesterday. And then we'll jump into review accessibility strategies, our commitment to making sure that resources are accessible to students, and then we will jump back into some more teen time for feedback. I was able to jump into a few resources on break. Very excited to see resources in process and reviewing learning goals and success criteria. Let's see, our magic number 48. We are at 12:01. And since we start on time, Trisha and Vitali, after lunch is all you.
We'll jump on. Hopefully we can wake everyone up after their relaxing 30-minute scarf down of their food. Hopefully I grabbed a little coffee, thinking that might be helpful. Quick introductions, because I'm not sure if everybody on the call was here last time we were here, but I'm a director of student sports, one of two, illustrious team of two at Smarter Balanced. My background is I was a teacher for the visually impaired and blind for many, many years, working with students, babies clear up through high school, severe profound multi-handicap kiddos clear up to academically gifted. So I got to sit in a lot of classrooms with teachers just like you, helping support my students over the years, as I said. And excited to chat with you today more about what we're doing accessibility-wise. So Vitali?
Thanks, Trish. I'm Vitali Sheehan. Introduced myself yesterday, but just in case you forgot, or those of you who attended in June, I'm one of the other two directors of student supports here at Smarter Balanced. I've been at Smarter for 4 years now. In my previous lives, I used to do a little bit of research for diverse students, including students with disabilities, English learners, ELs with disabilities. Had a chance to travel around the country and observe some wonderful classrooms and collect some data. And also did a little bit of teacher training, teacher classes in one of the previous jobs as well. So really excited to be able to work with you folks and to talk about our favorite topic here, the topic of accessibility, which is, I believe, kicked off on the next slide. Yes, so there it is. So again, for those of you who heard us in June or in previous meetings for that matter, it is just a quick refresher. We understand that we are preaching to the converted, to the choir. And we also hope though that you folks, as you know, as we are repeating, reinforcing these messages, and also these meetings are never the same anyway. There's always something new that we learn as we go. But we hope that you are taking some of this information and spreading this in your districts, in your schools as well, because we find that even though accessibility is one of the core principles of Smarter Balanced, is one of the foundational values of Smarter Balanced, there's still challenges, and with making sure that our content, both instructionally and assessment-wise, is accessible for diverse student populations. And it's even more important to be thinking about this in our ever so changing times, where we have to make some adjustments, and when we are hearing that some of the marginalized groups are even further marginalized. So I'm really grateful for you for your attention to accessibility issues, and to making sure that accessibility strategies are seamlessly incorporated in your resources. And so again, just to throw up just a quick shout out to the accessibility paradigm shift. As you know, in the past decade, we have been shifting from paper-based assessments to computer-based assessments, and from making blanket decisions for groups of students just perhaps based on their disability status or based on their English learner status, we're able to now customize those accessibility features and resources so that they're responsive to students' unique needs, because often those needs are like fingerprints, they're very unique. And so we have to really be attending to the variety of needs and preferences of our students that we have in the classroom or that we are working with remotely. And And I think that this past decade, this shift is helping us a little bit with the COVID challenges, because had we still been in that paper pencil environment, we probably would have had even more challenges. I'm not saying that we don't have outstanding challenges. I'm just saying that there is a little bit of that silver lining because we're a little bit better prepared. And again, it's all thanks to you as well, because you've been helping us with this work all along. And I appreciate your staying on board with this. So as you may know, Trish is about to show you our graphic on the next slide, but we have over 60 accessibility resources in our assessment system. There's universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations. And I know we bring this graphic to you folks over and over again, but we still find that the teachers need a little bit more support with the graphic, with the options, because there are a lot. And often it takes a little bit of time to educate yourselves about some of the content that we have. But in the long run, this is going to pay off, because this is going to be not an add-on. That time that is invested into learning and educating yourselves about the accessibility resources then pays off, because our students are able to show successfully what they know and can do. And educators are better versed with these options and are better able to accommodate students. And so a quick also mention of our ISAP tool, our Individual Student Assessment Accessibility Profile. It's available on our website, but it is a process and a tool that allows educators to make decisions. Hopefully both. We're hoping that not just on assessment, but also educators will consider it for instruction, for assigning specific accessibility resources, and also looking at those resources from year to year and seeing where the same resources are needed by those students, because often, in some cases, students might no longer need resources, might need different resources. Some things might just not work for that particular student. And so it's a good way to kind of track that implementation of resources in the classrooms. And so as you are developing the content for in this meeting, it's a good idea to also think about that fine balance of resources as well. So Trish, back to you.
So as Vitaly said, there was really sort of a paradigm shift when we talked about resources for assessment. Often we heard prior to Smarter Balance in classrooms that things that students were using in classrooms every day weren't available to them on assessments, because the accommodations or resources available on assessments were really just for students that had individual education programs or IEPs and 504 plans. So this new, the Race to the Top grant and the start of Smarter Balance, as well as somewhat other consortium, really started to shift away from that idea of sort of, okay, those accommodations are just for students with disabilities, documented disabilities, and these other resources, we won't let other students use them. So with that shift, we really looked at what do individual students need to show us what they do every day in the classroom. And that's where we get these three-tiered system of support, as Vitaly mentioned. So universal tools is really the broadest category. That's for as many students that may have a need for these particular resources. It's really based just on student preference. There are resources that are embedded into test delivery systems, such as, like, for example, Highlighter. It's one of our favorites to draw out because everyone can relate to those. Vitaly's laughing at me because it drives him nuts. Breaks are another example of something that's embedded in the system. So as a student takes our assessments, there's built-in pauses or breaks between segments of their assessment. And there's non-embedded universal tools as well. So things that are not necessarily within the system. So if a student needs a break outside of their built-in breaks, they can also take a break, which is non-embedded essentially. So they're really are just general tools that do not affect the student score in any way, other than it helps them access the test. And again, not just for students who are on IEP or 504 plans. Then we get to the smaller, sorry, I'm trying to jump ahead. Going to the middle tier, or a little bit smaller than universal tools. And it's smaller because it really needs to be a little bit more thought out, a little bit more carefully decided upon who gets these particular resources. And that's really just a team of teachers, along with the parents and the student where appropriate, can pick some of the tools that they may need. Again, no need for an IEP or 504 plan, but it may be, for example, students who are English learners who need some supports in mathematics for using the translated glossaries that Vitaly is so proud of. They're his babies. 13 languages, am I right? Every time I say that, I think, gosh, I feel like we have more than that. But so we support in 13 languages. And then there's also illustrated glossaries, which is his newest creation. Well, he managed the creation of it. There was research behind it.
We're all in this
also.
together.
Yeah.
Trisha's still helping in tons.
I just want to give you credit.
I appreciate that.
So those are just great resources that, again, the students don't need to be on an IEP or 504 in order to have them, but they may be. So with any of these tiers, students may get any combination of these tiers. Again, thinking not just blanket assignment of resources for students, like I'm going to turn on text-to-speech for everyone. Instead, really thinking about individual student need. We don't want to overwhelm students and provide a cognitive overload by providing too many, but we can also mix and match essentially. So if a student is also in the accommodation range, so they're on an IEP or 504 plan, of course, then now I'll talk about my favorite. Those are things such as Braille, ASL, American Sign Language. Those are things that, yeah, the student definitely has a disability that's documented. They're on an IEP 504 plan, it's in their plan, but they can also get designated supports. So maybe we have an EL with disability that has glossaries and another support. So just thinking about, again, that individual need, and that was the huge paradigm shift with Smarter Balance.
So that brings us to the task at hand, to the accessibility strategies that, again, you folks all helped us creating. Our wonderful accessibility coaches have been majorly involved. That was essentially caused by the need that we need to be able to respond to our students' accessibility needs, not only on tests, but also in instruction. And it's important for several reasons. One of them being we want that consistency. We do not want the student to see that accessibility resource for the first time when the student sits down to take their test. They're actually, they could be familiar from that in instruction as well. And also another reason would be to really ensuring that it is the student's equity right to be able to access that instruction in a meaningful way, as well as not just like assessment content, but instruction content as well. And that's why kind of that prompted this project, this work of developing what is now 54 accessibility strategies. And you may remember that in one of the previous slides, we mentioned that we have over 60 universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations that Trish exemplified for us. But we have a few fewer, not quite as many accessibility strategies.
And you know, the math teachers are already figured
I know,
that out.
math
They're
teachers
like,
like, what's going on?
Wait.
Yeah. So not that my math is any good, but let me just remind you that the difference in those totals is the fact that some of our accessibility resources are embedded and non-embedded. So some are provided as part of the system, part of the platform, and others might be locally provided. So Trisha's favorite, Braille, it can be embedded. It is part of the system. It is available to the students as the student sits down to take a test, and it can also be provided at the local level through paper pencil supports, through embossing supports, through some other supports. And so when it comes to that differentiation in the assessment system, we kind of still needed to look at them differently. Whereas in the classroom, we are looking at that particular strategy holistically. We're still accounting for some of the online versions, some of the ideas for locally, for paper pencil supports, or some other ways of using Braille resources. But we just thought for kind of simplicity, for kind of systemic purposes, we thought we would not just repeat it in that case. That's why that kind of difference in the totals. And feel free to reach out. There are some other examples there as well, like breaks, for example, embedded and non-embedded in the system, but for the strategy, you just have one. And of course, I have to acknowledge, as I mentioned, all of you folks helped us to develop those strategies, and they were also reviewed by other stakeholders in the field, like our accessibility bias and sensitivity group, some other experts, just to really make sure that we're vetting those strategies and we are accounting for multiple ways of really learning what those strategies might look in the classroom. And I also look to you today and this week, if there are some other ideas as you're looking at each particular strategy and you're thinking, maybe those English glossaries, there's another way to present how, we are doing that definition of the term. Maybe it's in the form of a graphic organizer of sorts or something else. feel free to get creative and throw that in and maybe call it out for us as well. And we'll try to eventually update the strategies online too. And then, of course, the exciting news, as you remember from this morning, Chelsea modeled the Tools for Teachers website and that awesome tab where those strategies are all posted. You can click on just the tab and get all 54 of them. You can search them by a particular term. Again, I understand it's a lot of them. It might be a little overwhelming at the beginning, but as you start clicking kind of through, you will get some ideas. And so when it comes to actually implementation of those strategies in your resources, I think we're looking to have at least 2 per resource, 3 perhaps. If you only can think of 1, you might want to just like dig a little bit deeper to make sure that we have a good representation of those resources, of those strategies across our resources. And we also noticed that sometimes they're favorites. They're kind of easy go-tos when you create those resources. It's very tempting to pick that highlighter or that calculator because it fits within many strategies with many resources that we're working with. But Trish and I encourage you to kind of push yourselves, and especially if you see that your colleagues in your group are already using that calculator, you know, somebody would call the dibs or something, then feel free to maybe select a different one or an additional one, just so that educators in the field, when they work with those resources, they have some additional ideas. So it's not kind of just the favorites or the usual go-tos, but we have really like a nice gamut of those resources represented in the strategies. And believe you me, there are ways to incorporate that throughout. And that's another point that I wanted to emphasize. We don't want to, we hope that, you know, there's a section for those strategies to be called out, you know, 2, 3 strategies, 3 accessibility strategies, as well as formative assessment strategies right next to them. But we hope that as you look at those, they are incorporated in, you know, throughout the other pieces of your resource. So it's not just a mention, just a nod to the strategy. If you, for example, are using masking, and you know, very political, hot topic these days, but that masking is embedded in some other section of the resource. You know, I'm talking about a completely different masking, and I hope you all are staying healthy. But you know, you really are thinking about how students could be using that resource meaningfully to benefit, and how it could be responsive to students' individualized needs. I ramble. I'm sorry, Trish. Next is yours.
Oh, no worries, not at all. And I think I wanted to emphasize also that it was really, you know, we knew that teachers were using strategies in their classroom already. They just didn't know the terminology and how that connected to what was available for students in the classroom. And Vitalik already said that, and we've been like so work married for so long, I might have blocked it out and not listened to him. It happens. I won't admit that in public too much, but so essentially we really wanted to make sure that we made sure that teachers understood what accessibility strategies they're already using in the classroom. Maybe they're not called accessibility strategies. When you look at them, like highlighter, again, I know it's such an easy go-to term, which is probably why everyone uses it. It's something a lot of teachers use all the time, right? In classrooms, you wouldn't think of it as an accessibility strategy necessarily, but it is as well. So when we were talking about how the structure of the accessibility strategies was set up, that description at the very beginning sounds a little bit clinical, because it is really the description that we use in our UAAG, our Usability, Accessibility, and Accommodations Guideline, that talk about the policy and what is that resource on the assessment. And then when we get down, we dig a little deeper and we talk about the student benefits. So how does a student benefit from this? And it will, if you read a little further, you'll say, oh yeah, that makes sense, because my student, for example, is using a line marker, and that helps them track when they're reading. You knew that that already existed and you use it in your classrooms every day. And now you have a name for it, line markers. Maybe line reader wasn't the best example because everyone knows what that is. And then when you get deeper even about suggested materials, it's not suggested materials for the assessment, it's suggested materials in the classroom, helping you branch out a little bit in your thought process about what a line reader might actually mean for some students. So it might mean an assistive technology device for a student, maybe a line marker run by a head wand that activates a switch for a student. Still a line marker, but it happens to be electronic. Or it might just be a piece of paper. My favorite material that one of my students who was low vision, she was so adorable. She was like just learning to read. And she used her stuffed giraffe because he had a super long neck and she loved it. She would use it like for a line marker, and she got to have her stuffed animal all the time. I thought that was a nice adaptation. Then we talk about instructional use, thinking about what kinds of activities, and this is what we want you guys to think about even deeper as you create your instructional resources. Not just grab a resource, an accessibility strategy, and plop it in, but think about how the instructional use ties in with the resource that you've created. So if you're working on reading a passage, and I'm not an ELA person, so going to become a parent quickly, that essentially, how would that line reader really assist a student in your reading activity? Things to consider are often information that a teacher may need for that resource. For example, speech to text. You might have students using Google speech to text all the time in the classroom, and that things to consider would mention that it is only available on the assessment as an accommodation. So even if you have students who are not an IEP or 504 plan, they would not be able to use that on the assessment, but a great resource to use in the classroom and helps them get their work done or complete their work quickly. And then many of our resources, we also have a strategy and action. So you can go to our sample items website or to your state specific practice test, our sample items site, and actually turn on some of those resources if you want to see them in action. So there's usually information or links to that sample item website as well. And again, we encourage you to be creative, to think outside of the box a bit, to dig in a little deeper and try to find at least one strategy that you didn't know about yet. And just see if you could read up on it, see if it ties into the resource. If not, maybe be that person that people could go to answer questions about how that might fit into their resource at your table.
And one more thing that I meant to mention with the previous slide as well, but I think that with the slide it works too. We do have another resource that we developed for remote teaching and learning based on the 54 strategies that you folks all worked on. And because Chelsea mentioned that we need to be thinking about also remote implications and some of the ideas for remote teaching and learning, I just dropped a link in the chat for you folks, and I believe Tanya posted it for everybody as well, so feel free to double check. We'd be happy to provide it at a later time too. But on one of the first pages, you will see tables with those strategies kind of at a glance, and you have some ideas for synchronous and asynchronous learning. Oh, thanks for sharing, Chelsea. You pulled that, there you go, the page one. You see how there are some ideas for direct and indirect teaching and for what the student might be able to do independently, as opposed to what a student might need help from an educator perhaps with. And so if, they all are hyperlinked as well. If you click, for example, on breaks, it will take you to the actual strategy description. Still, I am biased. I would recommend using Tools for Teachers because it is more searchable and all those descriptions are available there. But this document will probably give you some ideas on how to use, on how to think about, again, remote administration, remote teaching and learning. So now, to our stellar team of accessibility coaches. And I wrote down the folks' names, but please, if I miss somebody, please chat your name or speak up. I have Becky, Elise, N, Serena, and Mary, a wonderful team of accessibility coaches, as well as differentiation coaches, as well as intercultural education coaches, cultural responsive teaching coaches who will be able to assist you folks with some of those suggestions with supporting with selection of accessibility strategies and making sure that, again, they're embedded throughout. They might have some additional accessibility ideas for you. Usually please be kind to them. They're there to provide that feedback. And I think they're very open to providing different kinds of feedback. We understand that your groups might be in different stages of where you are with the resource development, but we also hope that you are thinking about those strategies to begin with, from the start. So it's not an afterthought. So it's something that, as you are embedding the strategy, you are thinking about how you would embed it, again, as Trish mentioned, in different portions meaningfully. And again, the coaches will tell you about their other expertise areas where they can support you. I mentioned the differentiation and cultural, intercultural competence, and so they will help with some content, perhaps, while making sure that there are no stereotypes that are used, perhaps, in the content, so we don't offend or alienate any of the student groups in the classroom, or perhaps that are directions that you are using on some handouts or in some activities are really simple enough so they're comprehensive for our English learners, for other student populations, because it is likely if we are making them simple enough for one student population, other student populations will also benefit from this. And so again, using those universal design approaches and everything else, again, they're wonderful folks, and Trish and I are here to support you folks as well. So you will notice we'll be probably jumping, among rooms, or we will be kind of lurking at the documents. If you have any questions about the comments that we make or anything, please feel, you know where we live, and feel free to reach out at any point. Next slide, please.
Yep, and we just want to add quickly to the accessibility coaches are also seasoned SNEs. So they've been in your place, they've created resources, they know about the process. So don't feel like they don't know, what it is you're going through at this point. Also, I see that Tammy had a question if there was a way to go to Tools for Teachers and search for resources that used a particular strategy. You can search for the particular strategy, but I don't believe that there's crossover necessarily in the search. So if you go to accessibility strategy, you can search and read up on each of the strategies, but I don't believe that you can search specific resources with those strategies. But that's a great idea for an enhancement for later. I wanted to use a quick example illustration glossary, which I always laugh because it's Vitaly and I get very nervous, because I know Braille, but glossaries I don't know as well. So this is good for me. It pushes me to learn more as well. So the illustration glossaries are a new glossary this last year, and it's in designated support. So again, it's for an educated team can make that decision for a student if they need this particular support for mathematics. It was the research and work that went into the design of this particular resource is really designed for students who may not benefit from the text-based glossaries. So maybe it's students who speak another language than the 13 massive amounts of language glossaries that already exist. Also could be used for students who don't use American Sign Language. We provide American Sign Language for our mathematics, but there are other sign systems that students may not be using or may not be proficient in ASL that this might also help those students. And again, it can be combined with other resources based on student need. And I just have a screenshot. So essentially a student can highlight over a word or hover over a word and see a highlight. Click on that word and a pop-up box pops up with an image of that particular one is an illustration of travels. So it just helps the student provide those language support that they may need, non-construct relevant words. So they don't necessarily gloss words that they're learning in the classroom with their mathematics, but instead those words such as travels, fare, things that students may not have prior knowledge of or be struggling readers may not be aware of. Did I miss anything, Vitaly?
No, that was beautiful, Trish.
Okay, good.
Give me chills. Trish so masterfully described what this resource looks like on assessments. And so here you have some ideas for classroom use. And in the classroom, I have to say the world is a much bigger oyster for you because the assessments, they're high stakes, they're very standardized. In the classroom, our educators have a little bit more freedom with the, creativity and the directions in which this resource can be taken. So you can see students can use illustrations to show how they understand certain terms, certain vocabulary. Teachers can use certain illustrations to really demonstrate content to make sure that students get that additional, especially those of us who are visual learners who can benefit from some of those additional supports. Students themselves can get creative and in addition to just having the linguistic supports in the classroom, making sure that, creating some of the images, you can take it in some other directions. Again, you can have flashcards with just the illustration on one side and the term on the other side. There are some other ideas. I believe we will have a chance to get into smaller groups. And so I invite you folks to think about some other ideas of using either this illustration glossary strategy or some other strategy or some other strategies and seeing how you would employ them in your resources. So that brings us probably to that discussion point, Amy, right? Unless there are questions or comments.
Vitaly, last time we met, you guys made a really good point, and I didn't hear it today, or it didn't resonate as the same way, and I don't want to mess it up. But you talked about just because a strategy might be available on an assessment and or might be an accommodation, for example, does not mean that we should shy away from it in our resources here to have it be available to all students as just an accessibility option. Whether or not they would have it available in their assessment would be a secondary conversation in a classroom, but that it still would be okay to use it in an instructional way. Can you elaborate? Do I have that right?
That is great. Yeah, Tanya, thank you so much for tracking that point and for reinforcing that, because indeed, we do have more restrictions with how strategies are available on assessments. For example, how text-to-speech is available, and we recommend the text-to-speech, English learners are not necessarily the population for this, for whom this resource is available on assessments. But in instruction, we have a little bit more freedom, and so educators are able to then use some of the ideas that utilize either text-to-speech or read-aloud activities with different student populations, including English language learners. So thanks for that. Trish, any other thoughts on this?
It brings me back to your conversation about UDL as well. Just, that often these resources have been designed, specifically to access, our assessments, but they also could help others access education. So often, what is good in design for some students often is great in design for other students as well. So that's a very good point, Tanya. I know we want to drive that home. Yeah, don't be afraid to shy away from accommodations. Don't be afraid to shy. I'd love to see some more ASL in classrooms. That would be great. Why not, right?
I've even seen teachers where they, use something from one of these lessons and they use an accessibility piece or strategy during their lesson for like a whole group thing. And then later the conversation is, oh my gosh, I never imagined that Jose would respond that way to, for example, whatever the accessibility strategy is. How do I go about getting that made available to him for assessments, which is now a whole nother nice conversation to be having. So sometimes I think it opens the door for teachers to see, oh, I never really would have even thought to make that available. And now it really worked for that student. And so let's see how we can connect it.
Exactly. And all of our resources really came from supports that students were getting in classrooms anyway. The restrictions or policies really just are derived from making sure that things don't interfere with the construct being measured. Like we don't give calculators to students on non-calculator items because we need them to do the mental math. So those are some reasoning, things that happen behind the policy aspect. Like you said, in the classroom, it's everything is fair game. Whatever helps your students is the most important thing.
And I hope you folks are seeing a note from Matt in the chat about our Smarter Balanced Content Explorer, which is another wonderful resource to use. Full disclosure, this morning, I was just watching one group use it. It was just, I was in awe because they were able to really navigate through all the buttons. And I see, Chelsea, you were modeling it. And I think the resource is posted as well, Tanya. Feel free to chime in if there's a link. But again, another quick way to see, to click on the accessibility aspect, on some other ideas to give you on all the targets, all the content aspects that will probably give you some more ideas with this development process. So thanks, Matt, for that. Yeah, the link, Tanya says, the link is available on the website as well. We went over, sorry, Amy, but.
It's okay. Thank you so much, you guys. That's amazing. I always get excited, and thank you, Tanya, for bringing up that point about using them instructionally is a little bit different. I mean, it's a great way to introduce teachers to different strategies and to learn more about which strategies work for students. So I just really want to challenge you to think about your learning today, reviewing, thinking about your resource, thinking about some of the accessibility strategies. If you do use an illustrative glossary, let's make sure that we provide a sample, because if it is brand new to someone, they will need it there as well.